You have been living as if you are at the mercy of the world. Every harsh word cuts you. Every rejection diminishes you. Every setback convinces you that life is happening to you rather than through you. You react instead of respond. You defend instead of stand firm. You seek peace outside yourself while carrying chaos within. But there is a presence inside you that has never been touched by any external storm, never been diminished by any criticism, never been shaken by any circumstance. Once you discover this infinite presence within, you will never again mistake yourself for someone who can be disturbed. Because once you see this truth, you can never unsee it. If you're ready to discover the unshakable foundation that already exists within you, subscribe, because this channel exists for those who choose inner sovereignty over external dependence. Within you exists a sanctuary that no external force can penetrate, no circumstance can contaminate, and no person can violate. This is not mystical thinking or wishful philosophy. This is the recognition of what you actually are beneath all the things you think you are. You are not your thoughts, which come and go like weather patterns across the sky of your consciousness. You are not your emotions, which rise and fall like waves on the ocean of your being. You are not your circumstances, which change like seasons, while something within you remains timelessly unchanged. Think of a mountain that stands unmoved by the storms that rage across its surface. The winds may howl, the rains may pour, the lightning may strike, but the mountain itself remains perfectly still, perfectly centered, perfectly itself. This mountain exists within your consciousness. It is the witness that observes all experiences without being altered by any experience. It is the awareness that knows both joy and sorrow while remaining untouched by either. Most people live their entire lives on the surface of this mountain, blown about by every breeze of opinion, every shift in circumstance, every change in fortune. They identify with the weather rather than the mountain. They think they are the storm rather than the unchanging presence that observes all storms. But here's what transforms everything about how you experience life. When you recognize yourself as the mountain rather than the weather, you don't become indifferent to life's experiences. You become invulnerable to life's disturbances while remaining fully present to life's beauty. You engage with the world from strength rather than neediness, from fullness rather than emptiness, from presence rather than reactivity. In the center of every storm exists perfect stillness, and in the center of every disturbance exists perfect peace. Your consciousness operates exactly like a hurricane. On the periphery, thoughts swirl chaotically, emotions rage intensely, and reactions spin out of control. But at the very center of your being exists an eye of absolute stillness, where no thought can disturb you, no emotion can overwhelm you, and no circumstance can shake your fundamental peace. The tragedy is that most people live in the outer bands of their own hurricane, tossed about by every mental and emotional disturbance, believing that the chaos on the periphery represents the totality of their being. They fight against their thoughts instead of resting in the awareness that observes thoughts. They struggle with their emotions instead of anchoring themselves in the peace that remains unchanged by emotional weather. Consider how a skilled pilot navigates through turbulent skies. The airplane may shake and the passengers may feel unsettled, but the pilot remains calm, focused, and in control because they understand that turbulence is temporary while their skill and training are permanent. They don't fight the turbulence, they navigate through it with steady hands and clear vision. You possess this same navigational capacity in the realm of consciousness. When life becomes turbulent, you don't have to be turbulent. When circumstances become chaotic, you don't have to become chaotic. When others lose their center, you don't have to lose yours. Yet here's the secret that most people miss entirely. The eye of your hurricane is not something you create through effort or maintain through discipline. It is what you are when you stop identifying with the storm. It is your natural state when you cease to be fascinated by the drama on the periphery and recognize the peace that was always present at your center. You are built upon a foundation that existed before your first thought and will remain after your last breath. This foundation is not your personality, which changes with age and experience. It is not your beliefs, which evolve with new understanding. It is not your circumstances, which fluctuate with the unpredictable nature of life. This foundation is pure being itself, the simple fact of your existence that remains constant while everything else about your life transforms. When you build your sense of self upon temporary things, achievements, relationships, possessions, roles, you create an inherently unstable structure that can be shaken by any change in those temporary conditions. You become like a house built on sand, vulnerable to every storm because your foundation cannot withstand pressure. But when you recognize that your true identity rests upon the bedrock of pure being, you become like a house built on stone. Storms may rage around you, but they cannot touch your fundamental stability because your foundation exists in a dimension where storms are impossible. Think of how ancient cathedrals have stood for centuries, weathering wars, earthquakes, and social upheavals, while the wooden structures around them have crumbled and been rebuilt countless times. The cathedrals endure because they were built on foundations deep enough to reach bedrock. Your consciousness has access to this same bedrock, the unchanging awareness that underlies all changing experiences. Most people never discover this foundation because they're too busy building and rebuilding their identity on the shifting sands of external circumstances. They invest their sense of worth in things that come and go, then wonder why they feel constantly anxious about loss, constantly driven to acquire more, constantly afraid that life might take away what they've built their identity upon. But here's what changes everything about how securely you move through life. When you discover the unmovable foundation within your own consciousness, you stop building your sense of self on things that can be taken away. You stop deriving your worth from external validation. You stop fearing loss because you recognize that what you truly are cannot be lost. You are not the content of your experience. You are the space in which all experience occurs. This recognition transforms your relationship to every circumstance, every emotion, every thought, and every challenge you face. Instead of being overwhelmed by difficult experiences, you become the spacious awareness that can hold any experience without being damaged by it. Instead of being defined by temporary states, you recognize yourself as the permanent context in which all temporary states arise and dissolve. Imagine a vast sky that contains all weather, storms, sunshine, clouds, rain, wind, and calm. The sky is never damaged by any weather pattern that moves through it. Thunder cannot hurt the sky. Lightning cannot burn it. Rain cannot drown it. Snow cannot freeze it. The sky simply provides the space for all weather to occur while remaining itself unchanged by any atmospheric condition. Your consciousness operates with this same spacious capacity. Difficult emotions can move through you without destroying you. Painful thoughts can arise in your awareness without defining you. Challenging circumstances can occur in your life without determining your fundamental well-being. The problem arises when you identify with the weather rather than the sky, when you think you are your anger rather than the awareness in which anger appears, when you believe you are your sadness rather than the space in which sadness is temporarily held, when you assume you are your fear rather than the consciousness that observes fear without being afraid. This misidentification creates unnecessary suffering because you experience every temporary state as a threat to your fundamental existence. You fight against difficult emotions because you think they are attacking your essential self. You struggle with challenging thoughts because you believe they represent the truth about who you are. But here's the liberation that awaits when you make this crucial recognition. When you identify with the space rather than the content, you can allow any experience to occur without resistance because you know that no experience can alter the fundamental spaciousness of your being. You become like the sky, vast enough to hold any weather, stable enough to remain unchanged by any storm. Behind every experience, observing every thought, watching every emotion, stands the eternal witness that can never itself be objectified or disturbed. This witness is not another object in your consciousness that you can point to, analyze, or manipulate. It is what you are when you stop trying to be anything else. It is the subject that can never become an object, the seer that can never be seen, the knower that can never be known as a thing among other things. Every time you notice your thoughts, there is something doing the noticing that is not itself a thought. Every time you observe your emotions, there is something doing the observing that is not itself an emotion. Every time you become aware of your circumstances, there is something doing the awaring that is not itself a circumstance. This witness consciousness is your deepest identity. It is what remains constant while everything else about your experience changes. It is what was present in childhood and is present now. It is what will be present in your final moment, just as it is present in this moment. It cannot be improved or damaged, enhanced or diminished, because it exists prior to all categories of improvement and damage. Consider how a mirror reflects everything placed before it without being changed by anything it reflects. A beautiful face doesn't make the mirror beautiful. An ugly object doesn't make the mirror ugly. The mirror simply reflects what is present while remaining perfectly clear and unchanged. Your witness consciousness operates with this same reflective clarity, aware of all experiences while remaining untouched by any experience. If these words are awakening recognition of the witness within you, subscribe, not for entertainment, but for remembrance of who you truly are. Yet here's what makes this recognition so transformative. When you identify with the witness rather than with what the witness observes, you become invulnerable to external disturbance because the witness exists in a dimension where disturbance is impossible. You cannot disturb awareness itself. You can only disturb the objects that appear within awareness. Life moves through you, but you do not move with life's movements. Like a riverbank that allows the water to flow past without being swept away by the current, you can allow all of life's experiences to flow through your consciousness without being carried away by any particular experience. The river may rage during flood season and slow to a trickle during drought, but the banks remain stable, providing structure and direction for whatever flow occurs. Most people jump into the river of experience and then wonder why they feel constantly overwhelmed by life's currents. They identify with the water rather than the banks, with the movement rather than the stillness that makes movement possible. They become victims of life's flow rather than the stable presence through which life flows. When you recognize yourself as the riverbank rather than the river, you can engage fully with life's experiences without being destabilized by them. You can feel deeply without being overwhelmed by feeling. You can think clearly without being confused by thoughts. You can act decisively without being driven by compulsion. This doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent to life. A riverbank is not inactive. It guides the water's flow, determines the river's direction, and provides the stable structure that makes the river possible. Similarly, when you anchor yourself in stillness, you don't withdraw from life's movement. You provide the stable foundation that allows life to flow through you with grace and wisdom. Think of how master musicians can play the most complex pieces while remaining centered and calm. Their fingers may move rapidly across the instrument, but their inner state remains poised and controlled. They are not swept away by the music they create. They are the still center from which beautiful movement emerges. But here's what most people never discover about this inner stability. The stillness is not something you have to create or maintain through effort. It is what you are beneath all the movement. It is your natural state when you stop being fascinated by the drama of experience and recognize the peace that provides the foundation for all experience. Within you burns a light that no darkness can extinguish, no shadow can diminish, and no circumstance can darken. This light is not metaphorical or symbolic. It is the actual luminosity of consciousness itself, the awareness that makes all experience possible. Just as physical light makes visible all objects while remaining itself invisible, the light of consciousness makes knowable all experiences while remaining itself beyond the reach of experience. Darkness exists only where light is absent. Similarly, disturbance exists only where awareness is clouded by identification with temporary states. When you recognize yourself as the light of awareness rather than the objects illuminated by awareness, you discover that no experience can actually touch your essential nature. People often speak of being in dark places, going through dark times, or feeling surrounded by darkness. But these are descriptions of experiences occurring within consciousness, not descriptions of consciousness itself. The awareness that knows darkness is never dark. The consciousness that experiences confusion is never confused. The being that observes suffering never suffers. Consider how no amount of darkness can diminish the light of a single candle. The darkness doesn't fight the light or overpower it. In the presence of light, darkness simply reveals itself to be nothing more than the absence of illumination. In the same way, when you recognize the light of your own consciousness, all disturbance reveals itself to be nothing more than the temporary absence of awareness of your true nature. This recognition doesn't make difficult experiences disappear, but it transforms your relationship to those experiences completely. Instead of being overwhelmed by darkness, you become the light that illuminates it. Instead of being defeated by challenges, you become the awareness that can see through them to solutions and opportunities. Yet here's the profound truth that changes everything about how you navigate life's difficulties. You don't have to generate this light or maintain it through effort. It is what you are when you stop trying to be what you are not. Every moment of recognition, every instant of clarity, every experience of peace is simply this light revealing its eternal presence within your consciousness. Beneath every word you speak, supporting every thought you think, surrounding every sound you hear, exists an infinite silence that can never be broken. This silence is not the mere absence of noise. It is the pregnant emptiness from which all sound emerges and to which all sound returns. It is the spacious stillness that makes hearing possible, the receptive awareness that allows meaning to be received and understood. Most people live in constant noise, external noise from the environment, and internal noise from the mind's continuous commentary on experience. They become addicted to stimulation, uncomfortable with quiet, afraid of the silence because they mistake it for emptiness, rather than recognizing it as fullness beyond description. But when you learn to rest in the silence that underlies all sound, you discover that this silence is not empty, but infinitely rich, not vacant, but dynamically pregnant with all possibility. It is like the silence between musical notes that gives the music its rhythm and meaning, or the space between words that allows language to convey understanding. Think of how the most powerful speakers know how to use silence as effectively as words. They understand that pauses create emphasis, that quiet moments allow important ideas to penetrate deeply, that the absence of speech can communicate more than any amount of talking. They are comfortable with silence because they recognize its power. In your consciousness, this same principle applies. When you become comfortable with the silence of a quiet mind, you discover that this silence is not empty, but overflowing with wisdom, insight, and understanding. When you stop filling every moment with mental activity, you create space for deeper intelligence to emerge. The noise of constant thinking, planning, worrying, and analyzing often drowns out the subtle voice of wisdom that speaks in whispers rather than shouts. This wisdom doesn't compete with mental noise. It simply waits for moments of sufficient quiet to be heard and recognized. But here's what transforms your entire relationship to inner and outer noise. When you anchor yourself in the silence that contains all sound, you can engage with the world of words and ideas without being overwhelmed by them. You can participate in conversation without being driven by compulsive speaking. You can think when thinking is needed without being enslaved by endless mental chatter. On the surface, waves rise and fall with endless motion, but in the depths, perfect stillness reigns eternal. Your consciousness operates exactly like an ocean. On the surface level of thoughts and emotions, there is constant activity. Waves of worry, storms of anger, tides of excitement, and currents of desire. But beneath all this surface activity exists an infinite depth of stillness that is never disturbed by any wave. no matter how large or violent. Most people live only on the surface of their consciousness, tossed about by every mental and emotional wave, believing that the surface turbulence represents the totality of their being. They fight against difficult emotions instead of diving deeper into the stillness that underlies all emotional activity. They struggle with turbulent thoughts, instead of descending into the peace that remains unchanged by mental weather. When you learn to dive beneath the surface waves of experience, you discover an inner ocean of such vast stillness that no storm can reach it. This doesn't mean you stop feeling emotions or having thoughts. It means you stop identifying with these surface activities and recognize yourself as the deep ocean that can hold any amount of surface motion without being disturbed. A deep-sea diver doesn't fight against the waves on the surface. They simply dive beneath them into the calm depths where different laws apply. In the same way, when life becomes turbulent on the surface of your experience, you don't have to fight the turbulence. You can dive into the depths of your own consciousness, where peace is not an achievement, but your natural state. Consider how even in the most violent ocean storms, there exists a depth where perfect calm prevails. Fish live in these calm depths, unaffected by the surface turmoil. The ocean floor rests in eternal stillness, regardless of what storms rage above. Your consciousness has access to these same calm depths, regardless of what storms may be raging on the surface of your thoughts and emotions. Yet here's the recognition that changes everything about how you respond to life's challenges. You don't have to create this deep stillness or earn access to it through spiritual practices. It is your fundamental nature, always available, always present, always deeper than any surface disturbance. Every moment of returning to this depth is a moment of coming home to what you have always been. In this moment, this eternal, infinite, ever-present now, nothing can disturb you because disturbance exists only in time, and this moment is beyond time. Past disturbances exist only in memory, which is a present moment activity of the mind. Future disturbances exist only in imagination, which is also a present moment activity of the mind. But the present moment itself, the actual reality of now, contains no disturbance because it contains no time for disturbance to exist within. Every experience of being disturbed requires time. You need time to worry about the future, time to regret the past, time to build stories about why present circumstances are problematic. But when you rest fully in the immediacy of now, there is no time for disturbance to develop, no space for stories to form, no room for resistance to arise. Think of how a photograph captures a moment in time and freezes it forever. In that frozen moment there is no movement, no change, no disturbance, only pure being. The eternal now is like this photographic moment, except it is not frozen, but dynamically alive. Not static, but vibrantly present, not past, but eternally occurring. When you learn to live in the eternal now, you don't become passive or inactive. You become infinitely responsive without being reactive, fully engaged without being anxious, completely present without being possessive. You act from stillness rather than agitation, respond from peace rather than disturbance, create from fullness rather than emptiness. This is not a technique to practice or a state to achieve. This is the recognition of what is always already occurring in the only moment that exists, right now. Every breath you take happens now. Every thought you think occurs now. Every feeling you feel arises now. And in this now, this eternal present, you are already and always undisturbed. The world will always try to convince you that you should be disturbed by something. Past failures, future uncertainties, present challenges. But you now know the truth that sets you free from all such disturbance. You are not someone who can be disturbed because you are not separate from the infinite presence that knows no disturbance. You are the mountain that remains unmoved by storms. You are the sky that contains all weather without being changed by it. You are the silence that allows all sound while remaining eternally quiet. You are the stillness that permits all movement while never moving itself. You are the light that illuminates all experience while remaining forever bright. The world will always try to shake you, but now you know how to stand still in the storm. Now you recognize the unshakable presence that you are. Now you understand why nothing, absolutely nothing, can disturb the infinite awareness that is your deepest nature. If this message has awakened the recognition of your own undisturbable essence, subscribe, not for more content, but for continued remembrance of the truth that you are already and eternally free from all disturbance. Live as though nothing can disturb you, because now you know that nothing can. This is not philosophy you think about, but reality you embody. This is not truth you believe, but truth you are. Every circumstance that once disturbed you becomes an opportunity to demonstrate your undisturbable nature. Every person who once triggered you becomes a teacher showing you where you had forgotten your infinite stability. Every challenge that once overwhelmed you becomes a chance to reveal the strength that was always present within you. You are no longer at the mercy of external conditions because you have discovered the internal condition that remains perfect regardless of what appears to change around you. You are no longer seeking peace because you have recognized the peace that you are. You are no longer trying to find your center because you have remembered that you are the center from which all experience radiates. This recognition doesn't separate you from life. It allows you to engage with life more fully because you engage from strength rather than weakness, from fullness rather than neediness, from presence rather than reactivity. You become like a mountain that provides stability for others, like a light that illuminates without being diminished, like a silence that offers refuge from the world's noise. The journey is complete. The search is over. You have found what you were looking for, not by going somewhere else, but by recognizing what was always here. Not by becoming someone different, but by remembering who you have always been.